Hey everyone, welcome to a little How to Survive Uni, welcome first year uni lecture. My name's Bella. I'm going to get started in about 2 minutes time, just see how many people are here. As while I get us set up on our Slido for today. So this is really going to be a chill lecture. If you just attended my law lecture, the slides are looking a lot less sparse. Very much is just a bit of a discussion about what I think are some things I wish people had told me, some ideas, these types of things. Like, it's a very stressful, like some of you might have older siblings that have been to uni, which is great, but for those of you that are first in the family, or first of your generation, your younger siblings or whatever, like it's a bit chaotic, right? It's a bit of a hectic time. Most of you are probably starting next week. If you're lucky enough to go to UNSW, you've started this week, so congratulations. So today is very much a discussion about like what it's all about, some basic things like how to get set up, what timetabling's like, all that kind of stuff. But we'll wait a couple more minutes and then we'll get set into it. Okay, let's see, go to analytics. Let's see who's here. Got 31 people, that's pretty sick to me. Well, I'll start then and let's get introducing. So my name's Bella. I currently attend UNSW. I'm a fourth year Bachelor of Law, Bachelor of Politics, Philosophy and Economics student. I got back from Europe in December. I have fab time. Can't wait to go back. I keep dreaming about my exchange. I swim in the ocean heaps. I actually kind of like trimesters at UNSW. So if you've heard horror stories, don't stress. And I actually kind of love uni, which is a bit of a nerdy thing to say out loud, but I do genuinely like it. But thank you so much for tuning into our Uni Notes lecture today. For those of you that have known us as ATAR Notes, we're a connected but separate organisation that's hoping to continue the same role, basically, which is to support you guys through university with free resources, affordable resources that are designed for students by students. So as a part of our offerings, which we're getting set up over time. So in a couple of weeks, a week or two, we will have a bunch of study notes go live for every subject that has had a lecture this week. So law, psych, biomed, all that kind of stuff. They will be probably about 8 notes each for each unit, for each subject, which will go over a couple of units, basically. Totally free, designed by us, made by us to give you that kind of foundation that you can go over if you want to. Other than that, we also have our community discussion forums as a way to kind of keep connecting, chat to people, ask questions, because uni, as I said, it can be pretty hectic. Sometimes it's a bit hard that you don't know what's happening, and it's just a bit like, oh my god, I need some advice, and I don't feel confident asking other people. I'd rather the anonymity, which is really fun. So we have those aspects as well as newsletters, videos, and our lectures, which you're attending today. So thank you so much. We're also very excitingly going to start doing subject reviews. And what that means is it's a way for people who have previously done a subject at a university to kind of put out there, hey, I did this subject, I really enjoyed it, this is what the assessment was like, this is what you learn about. Mark is a bit harsh, that type of stuff, so that you can kind of get a sense of maybe what subjects you want to do. Now, depending on the course you're doing, you may have more flexibility, you may have less flexibility. If you're studying law, you probably don't get to touch electives until 4th year, but having a subject review might make you feel prepared, versus if you're an arts student, you can take the pick of a bunch and then you've got more information from other people. So just to get us testing and make sure we understand how to use Slido primarily, I just put up a little question now. What resources are you most interested in? It should be just under this screen. There's me, there's a screen, it should be just under here. There should be a little Slido. So I'm going to hold here for a couple of minutes just while you guys fill some stuff out, and get settled. But as a part of our free notes, as I kind of said, we'll be releasing these uni notes kind of guidebooks basically. So if you go to uninotes.com, you'll be able to get information for this because these are going to come out soon. And they will basically be content summaries for key subjects. So for biomedicine and medicine, it might be like, the skeletal system, the muscular system. For psychology, it might be like an intro to certain methods, right? Law will be private law, public law, these types of things. And it's basically our fundamentals. It's about like giving you that foundation so that you can then kind of feel really confident as you rock into uni for the first time of that subject. So they're meant to be intro courses. And they're not supplementing uni, but they're providing that kind of springboard. So I'm going to hold for like 2 more minutes because I want to see some more responses. I want people to feel comfortable being able to put something on Slido. Because as I kind of mentioned, this lecture isn't super detailed. I've got talking points to go off of, so I apologize if you don't love stream of consciousness vibes. But I really want this lecture to be about you guys feeling comfortably like, I'm stressed about this. What's your guidance? Slido is anonymous, so there are no silly questions. And it's totally your choice to go, like, what are your thoughts? I'm going to give you 1 more minute to fill that out. Okay, thank you very much for the 14 people that responded. There are more of you, I can see that. I can see how many people have tuned in. That's okay. So make sure you just feel comfortable asking questions, basically. To get us started, we're going to have one more little thing because I just want to suss out how you guys are feeling. It's not really going to change how I direct my lecture, but I just want to get a sense of how you guys are feeling. What is the vibe? Are we excited? Are we excited but a bit nervous? Are we genuinely stressed out of our mind? For if you're at a uni that's already started, how are you feeling a week ago? What are the thoughts? Most people I think are going to go a little bit nervous but still keen, because it's pretty stressful, right? But if there's anyone that's like super excited and ready to go for it, that's also amazing. And if you're a bit terrified but you don't want to hit that option, that is also fine. We will hopefully make you feel less terrified by the end of this hour. And the 100% of that second option. Okay, clearly I should have differentiated the answers out a bit more. But yeah, nervous but still keen. I think that's kind of the general way of feeling when it comes to uni, right? It's a pretty big time. Why wouldn't you be a little bit nervous? Not if you're not nervous, that's great. Go you, but yeah. So as I said, if you have any points, ask a question on the Slido below. It's anonymous. There is no wrong question. Ask me anything you wish. It can be about societies. It can be about certain subjects. It can be about exchanges. It can be about, I've had 2 friends that go on exchange, so we do have some information. It can be about sport, uni nationals. It can be about anything, really. Anything you feel like you want to know. If you go to UNSW, please, or you're going to, you started this week. You can also ask me in that regard about specific things, and I can also help out with some other Sydney unis like Sydney, UTS, Macquarie, because I have friends there or I've done stuff there before. So this is really like please chuck it on the Slido. Like, it will be not a boring lecture. I will have a great time, but these lectures are for you guys, right? So if you have questions, I want to hear them. I want to read them all right correctly. So I want to make sure you guys getting everything out. Don't have any questions when this stream ends, right? Get them all out. Okay, let's jump straight in about the number 1 uni question that people ask. What's the social life like? I am genuinely curious because I want to see. There's a lot of people like a little bit nervous but still keen. Let's have a look at how many people from your school are going to your uni. Now, this is a separate question of how many people are doing your degree. Let's go. Launched and save this. How many people from your school are coming to uni with you? Because I see a fair bit about, and maybe this is a bit cringy, so I apologize if you don't want to hear about this. It's about like, how do you make friends at uni, right? It's hard, right? Because you're going in, you may not have any people, you know, you might not have heaps. And even then that's a bit daunting because it's okay, I don't necessarily want to hang out with just people I went to high school with. I'm a grown person. I'm an adult at uni. So sometimes, and if you have friends coming with you, great. But a lot of people ask, or I've heard people ask and be stressed about before, especially when like you see the like UNSW subreddit, like how do you make friends? And it's pretty stressful, right? Like it's like, oh my God, I'm gonna rock up, I'm gonna get on my little train or tram for you Melbourne people. Or Gold Coast. Does Gold Coast have a tram? Brisbane has a tram, maybe? I don't know. Don't know public transport in other cities. You're going to rock on your little train and get off, and there's going to be hundreds of people around you and you know no one. And that's a really scary thought, right? When I started uni, there were maybe 6 people from my high school that were going to UNSW. UNSW is a pretty big university. There is one girl who did law. And I was friendly with like maybe 3 of those 6 people, but not much more than that. Like, and then none of my besties are coming. And I was terrified because I was like, oh my God. And the number one tip I have is that everyone else is as well. And you can kind of see here in the survey, no, it's 12. It's not exactly a big sample size. Bunch of people have no one. A bunch of people have an okay amount, so not heaps. And then I like the differentiation between so many people having 17% and there only being 8% of friends. So there's about 10% there are people coming to my uni, but I don't like them. And that's totally fine. As you can see, there are a lot of people here in the same boat, right? And I know that sounds incredibly trite and easy for me to say being a 4th year. But your best tip, number 1, is to acknowledge that everyone feels this way. And there's going to be a couple of you like sitting in class, maybe feeling a bit awkward, being like, oh, hi. And one of you will just need to put your dignity on the line just for a moment, swallow it all down and say, hey, do you want to grab coffee or do you want to grab lunch after this class? Or hey, can I grab your Instagram? However you want to start it, go for it. And it sounds silly to say, like, just say it. Just ask people to go for coffee because it's like, oh, can I? Like, is that a bit awkward? And it might be like, to be clear, I'm a woman. Like, I don't know. I'm sure guys do, but you might need, for the blokes in the stream, that might not be as much of a thing. I'm not sure. I mean, I go out to coffee with guys, so it's fine. But if that maybe feels a little bit more awkward, think of something else. Hey, where's your next class? Do you want to walk together type thing? Things like asking, what are you studying this term? What's your timetable like? They're general icebreaker questions, but they just allow you to come across as a friendly person who wants to get to know people, and it makes you seem confident, comfortable, and relaxed to the people around you, even if you're absolutely not feeling that on the inside. So I rocked into my first law class. I wasn't late, to be clear, but the law class was fairly full, which was very funny. All the eager nerds, right? And I kind of sat down, I was like, and I just chatted to some people, and it was great. And some of those people that were in my class, I'm still really great friends with today, which is fantastic. It can be hard for things like you're in tutes. You see one person for an hour every day, kind of an hour a week for 10 weeks, and then you'll never see them again. It can be a bit awkward, right? So that's also where things like societies come in. So most of you will have a society that corresponds to your degree, right? So you'll have some type of law society, business society, art society, probably various iterations of like engineering societies or whatever. Join it. If most of you probably had O Week this week, I would guess, at least in Sydney, join it. So if you haven't, you head on into O Week tomorrow, if you haven't been yet, because it is really fun. I know that sounds dorky. It is a really great time. Go by yourself. There will be heaps of other people there by themselves. And rock up to whatever your society stall is and introduce yourself to like the third year that's running the desk and say, hey, like I'm just starting. And they'll sign you up and they'll give you a flyer for the camp in 5 weeks' time. And you can say, hey, well, do you have any like tips to start? And they'll be more than happy to chat to you. The people that are running stalls on O Week or Welcome Week are people that really want to be there. No one puts a gun to the head and forces them to become like an exec at a society. They do that of their own free will. So it is very much a chance for you to just suss out the vibe and get involved. Now, that's for some of those societies are more academic, but most have a mix between social and academic. So the law societies, for instance, will have, study events, and they'll have, talks from prominent legal minds and stuff like that. But they'll also do, law, like start a year party. They'll do law camps, stuff like that. And on that note about camp, really great time. If you feel comfortable enough, and some camps have certain reputations, to be clear. If you do a certain degree at UNSW in a certain society that has a bit of a reputation, I personally wouldn't have gone to that camp. And I'm going to keep that vague because I'm not going to expose anyone. If you've heard, you will know what society I'm referring to here. I'm not going to get sued for defamation or something. Go to camps. It is a great way to make friends because everyone there won't really know anyone. And I think that's why I want to emphasize is most people are at uni and they're keen to make friends. And if they don't want to, if someone's weirdly hostile to you about trying to make a connection, don't, that's their problem. That's a them problem, right? So it's very much, for the first couple of weeks, the onus will be on you to make an attempt. And I know that's a bit stressful. But ultimately, once you kind of get into it, it feels a lot less so. And societies are a great way to facilitate that. Join a bunch of random ones. So join your academic one, like whatever your degree is, because it's a really good one to just be involved in. But then, join the yoga society or the tea and coffee society or the food society, if only to get free food at a certain lunchtime, then you can rock up and chat to some people. My main advice for this point is truly to just like ignore the cringe, because you might feel awkward rocking up by yourself to a barbecue and saying hello to people, and you might feel awkward doing certain things, and you've just got to ignore that. And I know that because I am constantly aware of like just me, but you straight up just have to be like, no, I'm going to revel in the cringe for a second. I'm just going to move and deal with it. Especially for those of you that have not many people that you know of coming to uni with you. It's a really big thing to just kind of push aside the cringe, the awkwardness, and just fully commit to it. And then you'll get home and feel absolutely exhausted from all the social energy you've just spent. But go for it. And now I realize I'm kind of sending this from a certain lens of people who may be more introverted or people who may be a bit more stressed about this. If you're like a natural social butterfly, hell yeah, everyone loves you at uni. You're the best. Like, especially in those first courses when everyone's a bit awkward, you're the best person in the room. So keep doing that. No one thinks you're too loud. I promise. So just fully committing to it, especially in these first couple of weeks, is really, really key. And as I said, sometimes you'll have classes with people and then you're never going to see them again, and that's totally fine. And that's where things like societies might come in, that you see someone regularly at campus Bible study, whatever. That way you may not see someone every week, and then they might pop up in a semester's time in a different course you're doing, and it's like, oh, hey, I saw you a year ago. So you can have multiple ways of making friends. You don't just have to be buddy-buddy with people doing your degree. You can absolutely branch out, have completely random interests. In fact, I would recommend it. Join stuff. It's fun. And on that note also comes sport. So uni sport is actually really great because you don't have to be super competitive. One of the things that I saw before uni nationals last year is so many teams were like, hey, we need someone in our hockey team. They don't have to play hockey. We'll teach them. They just needed a number, right? So rocking up to, especially at O Week, whoever's in charge of like your sport, your student union will like be presenting that kind of stuff. And some will be sport societies like a boxing society or taekwondo society. And then some will be more formal clubs like a rowing club or a netball club. But often these, especially team sports, will still very much have a social league where you can go to uni games in September and have an absolutely fab time, but you can also get that sport. And it's a great way of meeting absolutely random people. So when I played water polo last year, because it was the first time sport was allowed after COVID, I was, myself and my friend were the elderly people on the team. Everyone's like first or second year, and we're like, oh, we're third years. And also we haven't played water polo since the end of year 12. You guys have definitely got us beat. We had a great time. The thing with uni is that it will feel a bit weird at first, like being friends with people in different years, but it very much melds together very quickly. There is no real difference between you and a third year, or when you're a third year and a second year and stuff like that. I remember going up to my law camp and being like, to one of like the team leader, I was like, am I allowed to add you on Facebook? Or is that kind of not allowed? And she was like, no, you're allowed to. No, please feel free. There's no rules about that. But I was like, is this like a weird thing? So it's absolutely, uni is number one, as silly as it sounds. Yes, you're there to get a degree, right? It is tertiary education. But the reason why uni is different to high school is that you've, one, got flexibility, which can be a bit scary as well. But two, it's actually fun. You're, one, picking stuff you actually want to do. Hopefully you're doing a degree you actually want to do and not something you've been pushed towards doing. You are meant to have fun at university. You will look, especially if you're doing a long degree, like 4+ years, it's going to be a slog if you're not having a good time on some days. And you can absolutely still do well and have a good time. So I know people that have, gone to uni, struggled to kind of connect to people, and then thrown themselves into study. And I mean, they're doing decent, like they're doing well, but they have no connection to their uni, and they don't seem to care. And that's partially a COVID legacy from people in my year. But I think of the people who have thrown themselves that I know, me, my other friends who I went to high school with that are now absolutely thriving. I love seeing them when they post on Instagram and they're doing great. The enjoyment you will get out of that will also make you do better academically, because you'll actually enjoy coming to uni. It won't just be, oh, I've got to go to uni for a lecture. It'll be, oh, I've got a lecture this morning, but then I'll get lunch with my friends, so it's all good. Or, oh, I've got a lecture. Oh, that's okay. I'm going to go to the pub after with some mates. So it's 100% a way for you to actually build some connections and have a great time. Uni's meant to be fun. I know that's a bit controversial. I mean, if you're doing medicine, maybe caveat all of that. You might be slogging it for a bit longer. But even then, I know people doing med that are still having a great time. I would say, what's the other really hard subject? Law. I'm doing law, it's fine. And engineering, you'll all be fine. I think the only caveat is like maybe medicine, you might be having less fun than everyone else, but hey, you're going to make way more money than us, hey, and help people. So now let's have a look at our pre-exam study, which is our kind of week-to-week preparation we need to do. This will obviously depend on what degree you're doing, because if you're doing a engineering degree, your weekly work is going to look very different to someone doing an arts degree, for instance, or a fine arts degree for that matter, a practical arts degree. So when you get into it, the first thing you kind of want to do at the start of the week is think of stuff that is reliant on preparation. And now what that means is things to do before a lecture or a seminar. Generally, it'll be something like reading. Reading pages from a textbook or an article from an academic database or something like that. They can range from anywhere between heaps. I definitely got into reading that was 80 pages once, to something quite nice and short, depending. It is ideal that you do that reading, but you shouldn't harass yourself over it. Now, let me explain what I mean by that. What that means is that when you have a reading and it's 80 pages long, don't beat yourself up if you don't understand half of it. Your pre-lecture, pre-seminar, pre-lab work is about giving your foundation so that you're not lost in the lecture. Your readings, your whatevers should make more sense after you've been to your lecture. Now, you may be thinking, well, isn't that kind of counterintuitive? Why wouldn't I do the reading after I've done the lecture? Won't that make more sense? Technically, you're correct. Like, yes, you will understand. It will be easier to do the reading after you've done the lecture, but then you'll be lost in the lecture. And the best way to go about it is do your reading, take some notes, write some questions down, do the lecture, and then look back on your notes. If you want to, you can reread the reading. I wouldn't. But that will allow you to kind of get some context, and then you're able to go, okay, now I kind of understand it. So that's your pre-lecture or seminar or whatever. Then you move into your pre-tutorial or lab or whatever work. That work is generally going to be practice examples, looking at some questions, that type of stuff. So whether that is, here's a maths problem, please solve it before class so we can discuss it, even if it's just like an optional thing. It could be, here are the 4 questions we're discussing today, have a think about them, all that type of stuff. That work is best done before the tute or the lab or whatever, because then again, you'll be prepared. It's best done after the lecture because you'll have that kind of background knowledge now. So it allows you to kind of actively build your knowledge as the week goes by. Now, how you then go about finishing that up is you want to go back and consolidate that work you've completed that week. The additional work you might need to complete is you might have a quiz that week or something, and it might be worth like 3% or whatever. I know things that are worth an amount, a small amount, we'll get to that in a second, seem silly to do. I would highly recommend you do them. If only to take, even if you can't, like if you logically understand that it's really good to build that knowledge and even if it's, that it's important to intentionally do that work and imbue that knowledge in yourself, make sure you do those 3% quizzes, just because 3% is easy marks, basically. If only for something, think about that, right? If you can't see the benefit in general, or you don't feel like it. And I get it. Sometimes it's like 3% is like, oh, come on, why would I do that? It's such a waste. But it's a good one to have there. So the other thing is then at the end of the week, you've probably done some readings, some practice questions or quizzes or something, and maybe a little mini assignment in the form of 3 marks, something or other. What you will then need to do is either at the end of the week, at the end of the week after, or at a point where there is a natural kind of pause in the content you're going through, what you want to do is then go for consolidating. Now, what consolidating means is going to be really dependent on what you want to do. For me, it's every couple of weeks, every 2 weeks, is kind of just moving my notes from Craft, which is an app that I like it. It's pretty. I like it. It's kind of like Notion, but better. Moving it to a Word doc and rewriting notes so that they're clean and crisp and can be my study notes. So yeah, I have 2 separate sets of notes. That's what I just find works for me, because I like to stream of consciousness in class, but that's not really good for online, like for exams. It just needs a bit more order for it. So I do that every couple of weeks, like 2 weeks. If you're studying a science, for instance, you may not be able to summarize things as easily as that. It might be more of a, I need to write down some key formulas, some key info, and then just keep doing practice papers. That is all practice questions. That is also totally fine. What matters is that you want to continually be, even though, because what you basically do at the start of every week is you're looking forward to the week. You want to also make sure you're looking back every now and again. Your end of term exam will generally test you on everything except for whatever the midterm tested you on. So it is important that you are aware of what has been happening, because otherwise you're just going to get to the exam and be like, oh, I don't remember that week 2 stuff. So it's really important that you keep looking back as well as looking forward. So yeah, I had two very separate structures of notes, which also helped me get from like general class mode into, studying mode. Okay, let's get onto assessment study. Your grade obviously is made up of 100%, and that's generally going to be broken down into a couple of assessments. Some units will have heaps and heaps of assessments you'll have 5 3%ers, a couple of 5%ers, 1 20%, one whatever, and builds up over time. Now that's a bit gross when you first see it, when you first log on to your timetable, your Moodle, Canvas, whatever, and see that. It's like a bit of like that's a lot of work. But it just keeps you consistent. There are pros and cons to both things, right? The pro of lots of little ones is that if you stuff up one, it's not a biggie, and you can keep consistently working throughout the term. In fact, it forces you to keep consistently working throughout the term. The con, obviously, it feels like more work for less outcome. Like you spend time and that's 3 marks in the end. Alternatively, you may also have kind of 1 midterm, 1 final exam. This means it splits your work up, but each is weighted significantly more, and there's a bit of an issue if something goes wrong. So how do we structure our term depending on what it looks like? The first thing you want to do is kind of plan them out. So when you first get onto Canvas or Moodle, you want to get your calendar, if it's physical or if it's online, whatever, and instantly put in the assessments, like straight away put them in there. Just so you can think mentally and visualize mentally, when is my next thing that I need to do? When is the next task due? I hope that doesn't turn the brightness down for you guys as well. I just turned the brightness down. I've just got it's just really. If you plan that out that far in advance, it will really help you in terms of just mentally being aware of what's going on. If it is a little weekly thing, like you've got to do a quiz every week, it's a tiny little quiz, what you then need to do in regards to that is ensure that you are ready to do that at the end of every week. So if that means that you you do your pre-readings on a Monday, your lectures on a Tuesday, your shoots on a Wednesday, Friday evening might be your time to do the quiz. Or even Wednesday. It might even just be like your Wednesday, I shoot, and then 2 hours after your shoot, you just go for it. It really depends. It's up to you. But you need to set time aside to do these things. High school's a bit different, right? You get reminded a bit about when assessment's coming up. You have study periods, you have a very structured time. Like you go to school, you start 8:30, you finish 3:30. You go home, you start work at 4:30. It's very structured, like there's a rhythm. Uni is going to be very different. So it's a bit of a, well, how do I approach this? Working around, so ensuring that the first thing you do is put down when your assessments are, gives you a tangible goal to work towards and know what you're doing, basically. You can then work backwards from that point. Make sure, I would recommend, so most of you, or some of you, I don't want to be judgy, if you're not, hell yeah, will be working part-time at this point, or maybe multiple part-time jobs. You don't have to quit those jobs, to be clear, but make sure you've got a good balance between uni work and downtime, because uni is actually a chance you get to have some time to yourself, to play sport, to hang out with your friends, to just go to uni and study, whatever works for you. So even having a day off, like Friday is my day off, is a good way of looking at it. From that point where you've put your assessments in your calendar, you're then going to work backwards. Feel free to put a bit of a plan in about, like, you can use the plus minus 2 or 4 rule. I'm trying to remember. I think it's plus minus 4 rule, which says however many units you have, whether it's time or days or whatever, plus or minus 4. So your assessment might be due, let's say in the past, it's the 5th of February. Using the plus minus 4 rule means that in your head, you make it due on the 1st of Feb. Yeah, on the 1st of Feb. I just wanted to check I wasn't going to stuff that up. You're going to make it due on the 1st of Feb. Now, what that then means is that you structure your time around the 1st of Feb. So it might be on the 31st of Jan, then I'm going to have final draft done. On the 29th of Jan, I'm going to start doing referencing, that type of stuff. Put that down, not necessarily in your main calendar, but in another place. Like, you can put it down in your main calendar. It's just whether, is clutter a problem for you? Will that make you feel uncomfy? Totally up to you. So I'm going to discuss on the next slide, like general uni organization stuff and like programs to use and whatnot. For me, for like planning assessments, I use Todoist, but you could also use like To Do by Microsoft or whatever, right? Depending on what you want to use. You then can go and, as I said, work backwards. Planning around different moments. If you have a party coming up, you're not going to work that day, all that kind of stuff. That allows you to kind of have a clear plan straight away. And if you don't stick to it immediately, that's all good. But what you want to do is basically not be stressing. Uni is, I think the success is all about little work throughout the term. A hour's worth of work 1 week in week 2 is worth, I think, the same as like 3 hours work in week 7 when you've forgotten all your work from the previous weeks. So little bits of consolidation and therefore little bits of assessment, planning and study will do wonders in terms of being able to just succeed and thrive. In terms of how you can actually study, because at high school it was like, if you're doing more humanities subjects, you wrote notes, you did practice essays. There were heaps of them, right? NESA published them. Sciences, it was a similar thing, right? You maybe did some notes, but you mainly did heaps and heaps of practice papers because NESA published them, or whoever. It's a bit difficult, right? Uni, you don't necessarily have those resources and you don't necessarily know how to go about stuff. So bearing in mind that we have our goals planned down in our calendar in terms of when is something due, when do I want to finish it, all that type of stuff. Your study is going to revolve around primarily making sure you're on top of all your weekly work is the number one way. That will slot you, if you do all that, at minimum a credit, I would say. Doing that work consistently and being on top of it, minimum a credit. Adding into that the consolidation every fortnight probably bumps you up to a distinction quite comfortably. Because the thing a lot of people just do is they have a great time, which is what you should be doing, but not too great. Have a great time, forget about it all, get to week 9 and go, oh, I've got to actually work. And then it's a cram and it's a bit rushed and it's a bit chaotic. So staying on top of it is the number one way to get ahead. But let's say you're going, okay, cool, I'm on top of it, I'm organized. Cool. What you need to do is say, okay, on top of that study that I'm already doing that's going to get me firmly into kind of a credit, maybe a distinction range, I'm going to think about what is my actual end goal here. What is my actual end thing I need to do? So for maths and econ subjects, that's going to be some type of an exam. Most lecturers will publish previous exams or practice questions or something. And they always put it there and they're like, it's optional. We won't go through it in class, but it's similar to your exam. And everyone only hears the first 2 points and it's like, okay, I won't do it then. Things like that are the number one way to get really, really prepared for the exam, because quite often the questions aren't just similar. It'll be the same structure, but just with different content, basically. It'll give you the exact same structure and you'll be really, really prepared. If you're doing a humanities subjects, you might only have a final assignment. If you've got a final exam, ask if they haven't published previous questions, ask your lecturers for some just example ones, just for funsies. They might say no, and that's fine. It's up to then for you to then make up your own questions. So take, week 2 on the syllabus. Might be, for me, it's US foreign policy this week, next week for my art subject. And then I'm going to go, okay, discuss how US foreign policy responds to Russia in the Balkans, because that's the concept this term, which would be a very thick essay. But I can kind of go from there. For law, most lecturers publish old exams, but then again, it's actually reading them, looking at them and having a think. Even if you don't go and do the full paper, that's fine, most people won't. Looking at an exam question or an essay question or an exam stimulus or practice questions for the STEM subjects, even just looking at it and having a think about it will immensely impact how you're able to respond in an exam, because it will really help you go, okay, I know what's going on now. And it'll just give you, it's not even necessarily about giving you an edge. It's purely about being able to go, okay, I am feeling confident, I'm feeling prepared, and I kind of know what's going on. So if you do all your pre-stuff, your bi-weekly or fortnightly, I should say, consolidation, and then practice before the exam, you'll have consistently worked on every single unit throughout the term. And when I say unit, I mean all topics within the course. You'll have successfully been consistent throughout the term. That is the number one trick, I think, especially for content-heavy subjects, which will be most of them, right? For things that have an exam at the end. Okay, moving on to this last point about marking and grades, which is always a bit of a fun one. So, I don't want to say a lot of you, because I actually fully do not know. A bunch of you here, because you're tuned in to a lecture in your last week, or your O week, or your first week of uni, or whatever, I'm going to guess you guys are dedicated to your studies, which is great. A lot of you probably did quite well in your HSC, VCE, QCE, whatever. YCA. I know it's WACE, but I just, in my mind, I just see it as a waste. A lot of you did probably really well. Uni, let's make this clear. A 90-something ATAR is not equivalent to a 90-something WAM, which is a weighted average mark. They're not the same. The HSC was a percentile, right? So 10% of the state got 90. In a course at uni, it might still be 10% get a high distinction. Even then, I significantly doubt that. But you're dealing with 10% of maybe 40. So 4 people instead. So getting a 90 is bloody incredible, quite frankly. If you get that, woo! But it's not necessarily a goal you need to have in mind. It's absolutely good to have I want to get a distinction. Fab. But a 75, which is a distinction, is not at all equivalent to a 75 out of 100 in the HSC, VCE, QCE. So I don't want you to feel disheartened if you get marks back and go, okay. A 75 is really, really great, especially depending on how hard the subject is. Now, there is that classic saying about P's get degrees. I would recommend you at least rephrase that to C's get degrees, just so that you're still pushing yourself. I think is a good way to look at it. So marking throughout the year is obviously, or marking throughout the semester, I should say, it obviously all adds up to 100. Now, what that means is you may have assessments that are worth 3%. And I would, as I said earlier, I would recommend you still take them as seriously as you can, because that 3% could really come in handy later. If you don't want to be sitting on a 49 and a pass mark is 50 and you forgot to do one of your 3% and you forgot to do one of your 3-mark quizzes one week, right? Little stuff will also help you get to the final exam, especially if it's a subject you find difficult, and be ready to pass. So in a lot of subjects, you still may have to pass the final exam to pass the course. So it's like a double pass model. Some you don't necessarily, you just have to, over the course of the term, get 50 out of 100. Sometimes you will be in a course and you will get 50 out of 100 or 45 out of 100 before the final exam has started. That will take immense pressure off you. And I'm not just necessarily suggesting you got to aim for passes, but if you're doing a hard subject, it's an important thing to think about, I would say. Think about the consequences of the marks you're getting and what they're adding up to. You don't have to be obsessively thinking about, like, what's my current grade? Seriously, don't. But it is good to keep in the back of your mind. As I said, grades, high distinctions and whatnot don't correspond to band 6s. They're not really the same. I would, to give you a sense of dean's lists and whatnot, I think it's like if you get a 75 average across the whole year, you kind of are a dean's list. I think. Which is I think that goes to show that getting a high credit is nothing to be, not to be sneezed at, right? It's still very, very good. So keep that in mind. It's a different world. The other thing is when you apply for jobs, you might. It depends on the job. You're probably just going to give them your average mark overall or your GPA or whatever. They may not necessarily see every single individual subject you've done. And what that means is if you do not so well in a subject, don't stress, provided it's not dragged your whole mark down, and I highly doubt it will, make sure you're still being kind to yourself and ensuring, like, when you think of an employer, an employer isn't necessarily going to really freak out if you've got one, 50 something in a academic record. So thinking about general uni organisation now, let's have a look at some nitty gritty about, go-to things you want to have on your computer or whatever, how to timetable things, what are some tips in regards to that, and some electives and free units. So what all of this means is basically your generic uni stuff that you had to do. So you would have all set up a program or you would have all set up a timetable for this semester at the very least, and you've probably picked courses for next semester as well. But it can sometimes be a bit confusing, like what do I actually need to study? Am I on the right track, etc. Now, the first thing is I would recommend hitting up like your faculty society and chatting to someone and saying, like, is there a progression plan I can follow? And it may be as simple as Googling, RMIT engineering progression. And it will give you like a little timetable about like, do these courses then, here's a free unit, have some fun type thing. Timetabling is, and program planning going into the future is quite difficult. Like, it's stressful. Like, I didn't figure it out until probably the start of my 3rd year about stuff. Because it's just a lot. It's very different to what you've had to do for the last 12 years. So what it allows you to do, timetabling like this, enables you to go, checking in your progression allows you to make sure you're on the right track, but it can also give you a heads up about what's going to happen in the future. As you then get further into your degree, you can then go back and go, as you get further into your degree, you can then reach out to either your society or whatever your student organization is. At UNSW, it's the nucleus, not your student union, but kind of your student services, I guess would be the way to put it. Sorry, I got a sore neck. For some reason, it's twitching. Your student services, basically, and ask for a progression check. So you can kind of email them and say, hey, here's my student ID, can I get a check? And they'll email you back and go, okay, you're on track to get your degree by X. Or, okay, you've missed this unit, make sure you do it at a point, type thing. That enables you to just keep on track the whole time. Student services, at least at UNSW, is absolutely fantastic. They're super friendly. It can feel a bit like stressful being like, oh, hey, I hope I'm doing the right thing. But every time I've had experience, it's been a good one. The other thing I would recommend you all do, just based on whatever progression plan you Google, is just set up a little Google Doc, make up a little table of like all your units you're planning on doing. So start with a lot of you are probably only doing, some of you, I don't know if it's a lot of you. A chunk of you will be doing only a 3-year degree, which is great. Congratulations. So just start with the first 3 years for now, or even just start with the first 2 years, and just kind of lead it to, okay, this term I'm studying blah, 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 blah. Next term I'm going to do blah, 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 blah. Okay, then I need to do this. It also just takes some time to do it because you'll need to look up when certain courses are offered, which will obviously change year to year, but you can kind of go about it that way. What you're then going to be able to do is feel really comfortable going forward. You kind of know what's going on, which brings us to this next point about electives and free units, because most of you will have either electives or free electives, basically. And I know that's confusing. I'm using the same word, but let me explain the two different contexts it might be used in. Elective, when it refers to your degree, is generally about you can pick a engineering subject of this range, but it still has to be engineering. You can pick a law subject, family law, coroner law, whatever, but it's still a law subject. It counts towards your law degree. Some degrees will also have free units, generally like arts degrees. To be honest, I don't know of other degrees. Arts degrees definitely do. That side of a free elective is like you can pick whatever you want from a different faculty. So for me, I've got some free units for my PPE degree, and I'm doing 2 English courses, which probably makes me sound a bit insane to some of you, but I'm really looking forward to it. So that's your chance to do something completely different. I have a friend that's doing, as one of her free degrees, is going to do an arts course. And when I say an arts course, I mean a physical arts course, which is really cool. So that's the difference. Electives generally are adding to your major degree. Free electives are things you're doing for fun because you have the space to do. And I would highly recommend, if you have those free units, do something fun. Like, don't go, oh, I could just do another politics course if you're studying politics. Like, straight up do a music course, do a journalism course, do some, like, you can keep it within, like, the arts space. Like, if you're a humanities girly, you can still pick a humanities subject, but have some fun with it. Like, it's uni. You're going to be doing whatever your degree is for a while after, probably. But why not? So why not have some fun now? Not but, why not have some fun? So why not have some fun now? On the note, the first one of go-to programs, this is just me that's going to chat about some tech stuff. So one of the questions someone asked is, do most people study mostly using technology, or is there a lot of pen and paperwork that is required? So this is interesting because I actually can't tell you pre-COVID, because now most exams are online and stuff like that. I think the majority use technology Now, the exception to this might be mathsy, sciencey subject. I think the exception lists a whole area of study because you might need to draw stuff. So a common thing people might do is iPads, so you can still type, have notes, but you can draw and free flow a bit better. That being said, I still know people who pen and paper it. I would say the most is tech, even if it's an iPad. There are still some pen and paper. I would just suggest if you're thinking about pen and paper, make sure you've got a way to back that up because it'd be really annoying to lose anything. But yeah, mostly technology, I would say. And technology, figuring out what works is going to be totally up to you. In a high school, you use Word, you use OneDrive, or you use Google Drive, right? Uni is your chance to experiment with that a bit. So for me, my calendar, I use a calendar called Fantastic Cal, which merges your regular computer calendar, a to-do app, and everything, and it's just really nice. So I use that for calendars to just keep on track of stuff. And then I also use Todoist, as I said, to keep track of to-dos because it can split stuff out really nicely. And then for my notes, I use a program called Craft. As I said, it's kind of similar to Notion, if you've heard of that. Notion is really great as well. It's just a bit more complex, too complex for me. And I have friends that have used other stuff as well. A lot of people will end up with just different things. And I know that sounds like a silly thing to think about. You probably are all just going to start with Word. That's so chill. People use Google Docs still, it's fine. Have a think about that though. Have a think about what might work best for you for your study. And have an experiment with some different apps and stuff like that. Like, have some fun. And I know that's a silly thing, it's kind of a weird thing for me to put out there, but genuinely, go for it. Okay. Got a couple minutes left. Let's just see. I think that's my last slide. Yay. Cool. So someone's asked will the session be recorded and viewable? It sure will be. If you come back to this link, it will be here. And then finally, any tips for doing uni online? I'm doing online for 2 years and then moving on campus. Congrats. I hope you still, if you can, I guess overseas stuff depends. I would really recommend for all of you, and this isn't to this person who asked this question, especially if it's not a choice, no, not shaming you. The joke is that the second lecture you watch online, or the first lecture you go in person after watching one online is the last one you go to or something. I butchered that saying. But basically, it's very tempting for a lot of people to watch lectures online and kind of stay at home. I would really recommend trying to spend time on campus, 2 days a week type thing. And for those of you that might be being I live really far away from uni though. Yeah, heaps of people do. It's Australia. Everything's far away from things. I met her on Monday actually for the first time. She lives in the Blue Mountains and she goes to UNSW. Which, if you know anything about Sydney's geography, is oof, indeed. If you've got a long commute on that note, a best thing, it sounds boring, I know, using it as study time is a really good way to go about it. And there are people who work here at Uni Notes and ATAR Notes that will tell you that they spend their 2-hour train trip, I just watch a lecture or I do my readings. And I really should do that, but I 20 minutes of my journey is a ferry and I just like taking it in. So I just am having a good time. But I did it when my journey was a train ride for 45 minutes. I just did work. So if you've got a long commute, studying it's a really good use of time. You don't have to do it all the time, but it is a good use. In terms of how to do uni online, so let's say you still either need to or you want to watch lectures from home, you might be working the day they're on, you need to do that. It is, I want to put it out there, not easy. The distractions are just so heightened. So I think your best bet is try and put your phone as far away as you can, because otherwise you'll watch it and just be put it away. put it away, or mute it, or put Forest or Pomodoro or whatever, something that'll lock you out. And just try and force yourself to sit down. The good thing about online recordings, you can speed them up to like 1.25, 1.5 if you need to, which I'm not saying you necessarily need to do, but I am saying that sometimes lecturers can be a bit slow. But make sure you just act like you're at uni. So sit at a desk off the couch and just focus. Give yourself a set focus time. I didn't do that during the start of the pandemic, especially. And then as I kind of got the hang of it, it was a lot easier to just be like, okay, I'm working today. I'm just going to the office, like not to the office, into the office room and just sitting and doing it. Still take lots of breaks. It's very tempting when you're online learning to just sit there the whole day. Take heaps of breaks as if you would. And the other thing is, from a social perspective, try and join some online stuff. And I know that sounds a bit weird, but if there are like online like yoga Pilates stream or something, like obviously not you streaming yourself, but if there's like a class that's streamed, join a Discord. Lots of societies have Discords, so join one of them and chat to people. Do a movie, like an online movie night type thing. A lot of events are still hybrid, like live streams and stuff like that, so you can still have that uni experience without you can still have a lot of that uni experience despite being at home. So I think the thing is make sure you structure it, but still give yourself time to rest. I know that's contradictory, but I think that's the best way to say it. But it will also be a matter of trial and error. You'll figure out what works best for you, as you will if you're doing uni in person. Okay, joining two sports and 2 non-sports societies on top of part-time work too much? I mean, there's things that depend here. How much part-time work, like is it 15 hours or is it like 5, how competitive is the sports societies? Is one national and one's for funsies? And same with the non-ones, like are you going to be an executive? Is it just for funsies? In terms of just straight up joining the societies, there are so many people that are in so many societies. It doesn't mean they contribute at all to them, but there are heaps of people that are members. So that is absolutely not a problem. I read this and I'm like, hell yeah. Like, especially in your first year. Yeah, I don't think that's too much at all. You will know if it gets too much. Yeah, I think that's totally fine. I think that's great. Go grab uni. Go grab it. Yeah, especially if one of those sports is competitive and one of those sports is just for funsies, that's even better. Because then one of those sports things is just basically a social event wrapped in sport. And same with the other societies. So absolutely. One of my friends, I don't understand her. She's too capable of stuff. She's president or co-president of the PPE Society. She's a vice president of the Law Society. She works part-time. She does volunteering stuff as well. She coordinates the volunteering, the legal centre in my suburb. And it's like, how? How are you like that? So it's absolutely not too much. If you can juggle it, go for it. I mean, make sure you're giving yourself time off, but go for it. Grab it. And on that note, I think that's a great note to end on. Have a good time. Do what you want to do. That's what uni is meant to be about. So thank you so much for tuning in, guys. I hope you have a fantastic first week. I'm super excited for all of you. Fingers crossed, no COVID. Have a great time, and I will not catch all of you around. I mean, if you see me at UNSW, feel free. I mean, you can come up and say hi if you would like to. You do not have to. Please don't just stare at me, though. You won't, I hope. Yeah. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday evening. Yeah, have a fantastic time at uni, guys. You will absolutely love it. Bye.